I'm Teisha with Shalom TV's news update for Wednesday, April the 30th, 2014. The IDF and Israel's security agency, the Shin Bet, revealed today that they have arrested several members of a Hamas-affiliated Palestinian terror cell over the last few months that were planning attacks against Israeli citizens. Of the 7 suspects arrested, 6 are Palestinian, 1 is an Arab Israeli. They were arrested in the West Bank city of Kharkiv over the last few months. The Israeli Arab was named as Khaled Daoud, who was looked to use his freedom of movement within Israel to get the cell raw materials for explosives and to acquire weapons. The terror cell was allegedly manufacturing improvised explosives and planning bombing and shooting attacks within Israel. The cell reportedly also sought financial support from a prominent Hamas activist in Kharkiv named as Salah Daoud, who apparently agreed. An indictment was expected against the suspects in the next few days. Aides to U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry say that Kerry will not give up on his pursuit of a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians, and that after taking a break for a few months, the Secretary of State would try and get the parties back to the table. One aide to Kerry said it's a matter of time before they all come back and want to have negotiations. Yesterday, April the 29th, marked the deadline for the talks that Kerry had put into place this past July. U.S. State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki addressed the deadline yesterday. She said, "We reached a point in which a pause is necessary. We are in a holding period." Psaki also said that Kerry has no regret about all the time he spent on peace efforts. She said he continues to believe that a peace process is to the benefit of the Palestinian and Israeli people and the American people, adding that Kerry will resume his full involvement should both sides be ready to, quote, make the decisions that are necessary. And the Times of Israel reports that United Nations Secretary General Ban KiMoon remains hopeful about the peace process. UN Mideast envoy Robert Sari addressed the UN Security Council yesterday, where he said the Secretary General firmly believes there is still a window for us, the international community and parties, to act if we wish to realize the vision of 2 states for 2 peoples, Israel and Palestine, living side by side in peace, security, and mutual recognition of each other's legitimate rights and those of their respective citizens, including self-determination. Sari also said that the UN supported reconciliation between rival Palestinian factions Fatah and Hamas, as long as Hamas took steps to moderate its views. Reuters reports that Sari told the council that Israeli and Palestinian leaders now had to convince each other once again that they are partners for peace. Palestinian observer Riyad Mansour was at the Security Council meeting as well, where he claimed Israel was to blame for the current situation. Mansour said Israel has maintained its rejectionist stance and persisted with its grave breaches, constantly reaffirming its role as occupier and oppressor, not as peacemaker. Israel's ambassador to the UN, Ron Prosor, told the council that Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas had abandoned the talks just when the deadline was approaching and brave decisions needed to be made. Prosor said, true to form, President Abbas performed his distinctive two-faced two-step. When Israel tries to tango with Abbas, we find ourselves abandoned on the dance floor as Abbas waltzes off with Hamas. And U.S. Ambassador to the UN Samantha Power, while recognizing the tough present situation, restated U.S. support for peace efforts. Power told the Security Council, "We have clearly reached a difficult moment, but we continue to believe that there is only one real viable solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, 2 states living side by side in peace and security," adding that if the parties are willing to go down this path, we will be there to support them. The Jewish mayor of the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, Gennady Kerns, is said to be in stable condition today after undergoing several hours of complicated surgery this morning at Haifa's Rambam Medical Center. Kerns, who was shot in the back in an apparent assassination attempt in Ukraine earlier this week, was flown to Israel for treatment yesterday to a private hospital in Haifa, but was transferred to Rambam, where he remains on a respirator and sedated in the hospital's neurosurgical intensive care unit. There is still no information about who was behind the attack on Kearns. Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics announced yesterday that immigration to Israel rose by 2% last year. The report said that 16,884 immigrants arrived in Israel in 2013, the majority, 43%, coming from the former Soviet Union, primarily Russia and Ukraine, 17% from France, 13% from the United States, and 8% from Ethiopia. And the number of immigrants from France have risen significantly since then. At the end of last month, the Jewish Agency reported that French immigration was up since the start of 2014, with 854 French Jews having moved to Israel since the start of the year. The Constitution, Law and Justice Committee of Israel's Knesset approved the recognition of an organization that helps Holocaust survivors, something that should cut down on some of the bureaucracy and difficulty that survivors face in receiving aid. The Knesset Committee approved the recognition of the Foundation for the Benefit of Holocaust Victims in Israel as a public body yesterday, one day after Holocaust Remembrance Day, something that allows for access to data from other institutions and hopefully makes the process of verifying survivors' eligibility for assistance a bit easier. And staying with the Knesset, 4 members of Israel's parliament are heading to the U.S. this week as part of the International Visitor Leadership Program. The 4 female Knesset members were invited by the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs to participate in the program that invites parliamentarians from all over the world to advance diplomatic relations and discuss domestic and foreign policy issues. This visit will look at legislative techniques used in the U.S., as well as U.S. efforts to promote opportunities for women in public service. The American Jewish Committee presented their Interfaith Leadership Award to Chelsea Clinton and Linda Mills for co-founding the Of Many Institute at New York University. Mills is NYU's Chancellor for Global Programs and University Life. Shalom TV covered the event, which took place at the AJC Women's Leadership Spring Luncheon in New York City yesterday. The Of Many Institute offers academic courses, dialogue programs, and other events in order to deepen understanding among different faiths on NYU's campus and in the New York City community as a whole. Upon receiving the award, Clinton said, "I am deeply optimistic that this work will be taken up on other campuses and in other communities." She said it is important to recognize people's potential for doing this work and to support them. Sometimes it is a rabbi and an imam, and sometimes students will be in the vanguard. The Of Many Institute is said to owe its beginnings to the cooperative relationship between NYU's Muslim chaplain Imam Khalid Latif and Jewish chaplain Rabbi Yehuda Sarna. And turning now to our Shalom TV programming for Wednesday, April the 30th. At 8 o'clock, former Chief Rabbi of Great Britain, Lord Jonathan Sacks, discusses Kiddush Hashem in a Complicated World from Beit Shemesh in Israel. And then at 9 o'clock, Esther Waxman, the mother of murdered IDF soldier Nachshon Waxman, joins Mark Golub on L'chaim to talk about her son and the difficult issue of trading Palestinian terrorists for Israeli soldiers. That's tonight here on Shalom TV and ShalomTV.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Wednesday, April the 30th, 2014. I'm Teisha Bader.